In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'm going to tell you why the predicted starting lineup worries me and how it could be a disaster for the Pelicans. And also, you won't believe who they just signed to a training camp deal. It's the Monday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with you on this Monday, and we are a week away from Media Day. We're going to get answers to a lot of questions we have about this Pelicans team. So you're going to want to subscribe to Locked On Pelicans wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are the number one Pelicans podcast for a reason here. And we got everything you want to know this week. We're going to be talking about Media Day. Today, I'm going to tell you why the starting lineup, the predicted starting lineup, really worries me and maybe what Pelicans need to have happen to alleviate some of those concerns. Then we're going to get into some additions to the Pelicans on the coaching staff and on their roster for training camp. I want to talk a little bit about Woj from ESPN leaving as well when it comes to coverage of the NBA. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. So let's talk about the starting lineup. When we had with the In the Know podcast and Schmidt Dua, the big panel over at Sports Drink on Wednesday night, one of the questions was, what do you think the starting lineup is going to be for this team? And we all answered in the same way, all five of us up there on the panel. DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Daniel Theis. That is your starting lineup, is what we're expecting. And Fletcher Mackel even tweeted out the other day, too, that he's hearing that Daniel Theis is going to start and that the Pelicans won't go with that small ball Warriors-esque death lineup to start the year. Look, I understand them wanting to have a traditional center out there, but this lineup, I'm going to be honest, worries me. And I think it's the Pelicans falling into some of the same trappings of last year here. There's not one person that you would call a shooter in this lineup. You're going to start Zion Williamson, maybe the best rim threat in the league, and not have one guy that you would be like, he's a shooter out there. Look, we know that Herb was incredible from the corners in from three last year on medium volume, but he's not an offensive threat that guys are going to sell out to stop. He kind of fits in line with what you need with this team, which is guys are going to make you pay for doubling Zion and leaving the shooter open. Herb Jones does that, but that doesn't make him like that court gravity offensive threat. DeJounte Murray is willing to take threes in volume, but isn't an elite shooter in terms of three-point percentage, though that probably rises this year because he's going to get a lot of wide open looks playing alongside Zion Williamson. And then Brandon Ingram's kind of the big unknown when it comes to the shooting. He can be a good three-point shooter. He chooses not to take threes. So when you look at this lineup of Murray, Herb, Ingram, Zion, Theis isn't a shooter that's going to have court gravity. There's not one shooter out there like Trey Murphy or CJ McCollum, someone that does command the defense's attention. They can take threes, they can make threes, these other guys, but it's not on the same level. You look for court gravity, someone that a defense is like, oh, we need to look out for that guy. Look at Jordan Hawkins already being on the scouting report after a couple of games his rookie year because he was a shooter. So not putting shooters around Zion Williamson worries me, right? We know he needs spacing. They need to put shooters around him, whether that's a small ball lineup playing five out or what. You need something like that, especially in today's modern NBA. And this team doesn't sound like they're going to do that. Does that mean that when you're starting Daniel Theis, right? Look, who was on his way out of the NBA. It's not a bad player or anything, but he was going to be in Europe. He wasn't going to be in the NBA on any other team than the Pelicans this season. That maybe makes him one of the worst players in the league, just kind of that you weren't going to be in the league, so you've got to be not one of the better players, one of the worst. And he's starting for this team without shooters. With that starting lineup, are they kind of playing 4-on-5 on offense? At least Jonas Valanciunas was an offensive threat and someone that could beat a team or at least score points in other ways, even if it didn't ideally mesh with this roster. But right now, are the Pelicans with this starting lineup going to be playing 4-on-5 on offense? Will teams just ignore Daniel Theis? That worries me. Does that make it easier to defend Zion Williamson? Does that make it easier to put 2, 3 guys on him? I think the answer to that could be yes. And this starting lineup does concern me. And the reason that really matters here, I think, is go back a year ago. And this was something for the everyday, the everydayers know this. If you're a longtime listener, this is something you've heard me say. If you're new and just started listening because you're going to be excited about the season, this is a point that's going to be really important throughout the year for New Orleans. And that is your starters need to win their minutes. The starting lineup for the New Orleans Pelicans last year, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, Zion Williamson, Jonas Valanciunas, did not do that. They were a negative 1.3 in their net rating. That's offensive rating minus defensive rating. They weren't good. They weren't winning their minutes is what that net rating says. Your starting lineup needs to do the bulk of damage against opponents. The Pelicans won a lot of games because of guys like Jose Alvarado, Najee Marshall, Trey Murphy off the bench, torching opponent bench units. But here's the thing with that. That's good. You want that. That's better than not being the case. The starters are playing the majority of your minutes. The starting lineup plays the majority of your minutes. We can look at it by possessions here. That starting lineup for New Orleans last year, 905 possessions. The lineup with Trey Murphy in there instead of Brandon Ingram was 317. The most impactful part of your roster is your starting lineup because they're going to play the majority of minutes over the course of the season. You can beat up on opponents, but if you only have a slight advantage there, you're not going to win tons of games. And this is one of the reasons why New Orleans struggled to come back in games last season. Compared to the top 4 teams, let's say, in the Western Conference, OKC's starting lineup last year was a positive 9. Pelicans were a minus 1.3. The Minnesota Timberwolves, positive 9.5. The Dallas Mavericks, a little bit different because they retooled their lineups a little bit, but their most used lineup, their starting lineup, plus 16, 15.9. The Denver Nuggets, plus 13 for their starting lineup last year. You get the point. Your starters, if you want to be a good team, need to win their minutes. The Pelicans didn't do that. Is a starting lineup of DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Daniel Theis actually going to do that? I'm not sure. It's not bad. I don't think they're going to get run out here. But even if they're just a net zero, kind of in the middle, that's not good enough for this team this year. They need to have the starters win their minutes. They did not do that last year. And it was a big part of the problem of why they looked so bad in the postseason. You don't run benches as much. You shorten your rotation. You play your starters more minutes. Now, they also look bad because they didn't have Zion. But you get the point that I'm trying to make. The starting lineup needs to be better. Is that starting lineup going to do it? I don't know. And that's one thing that I'm going to be looking for in training camp in preseason for the New Orleans Pelicans. How well does that group come together, or do the Pelicans need to figure out something else? And we'll talk about what that something else is in tomorrow's show. I want to look at guys like Karl Makovich, Yves Missi, even Trey Murphy, and we're going to play a little bit of like, what if those guys develop? What does it do for the team? And I think that's something that's really important to look at because they kind of are banking on that a little bit. Because my big concern is the starting lineup for this team, and that's not exactly how I want to feel going into the regular season. So coming up next, we got some updates for you. Elfrid Payton coming back to the New Orleans Pelicans. Does he have a chance of making the roster? I'll tell you in the next segment here on Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you can place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed All you have to do is place your first $5 bet, whether that's on the Saints to bounce back after that really annoying loss to the Eagles. Maybe you just want to get in on the NBA already because the opening night line for the Pelicans, -6.5 of the Chicago Bulls, is already out. That number seems to be getting bigger. Might be the best time right now to go throw $5 on that. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the action with America's #1 sportsbook. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this team. A week from today, I will be at Media Day. I'm looking forward to it. So we're going to have a lot coming for y'all this week, and in the next couple of weeks is training camp, and then preseason's going to be here before you know it. So for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. No offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's switch gears and not be so pessimistic here. I wanted to lead with that, even though it's kind of a negative thing. And I tend to err on positivity and optimism because that's a big storyline, is how effective that lineup's going to be this year. And if it is effective, then they're going to be in good position. If it's not, they're going to need to do something different. So this is something that we're going to be monitoring throughout the season. So you'll kind of get regular updates on the stats and things like that as we break down what's going on with this Pelicans team. There's some news you need to know. First, coming from our good friend Andrew Lopez of ESPN. Got a couple of updates for us. First, the Pelicans are signing Elfrid Payton. It's a name you probably haven't heard in a minute. Elfrid Payton to a training camp deal. He has not been in the NBA for 2 seasons now, but this is someone who formerly maybe had his best season in the NBA playing for New Orleans, where he had a couple of triple-doubles that season. Back in 2018-2019, playing for New Orleans that year. Really cool homecoming for a local guy who also played over at Louisiana, ULL. And it's nice to see him at least getting a chance with the local team. He's been out of the league since the 2021-22 season. Played in 50 games for the Phoenix Suns back then, averaging 3 points per game. You know, it's an unguaranteed deal. I think this is just a nice little thing the Pelicans are doing. When you look at their roster and where they are in terms of the salary cap, they're not really, no one they add to training camp, you know, who's going to play in preseason or anything like that, really has a chance of making the roster. I like the idea of Elfrid Payton, but, you know, 2 years out of the league really isn't it, and I don't think that's going to lead to a good situation here for him. Look, he's a local guy. I don't know if he's still local to New Orleans or not, or where he's living now, but to throw a body that's experienced, can maybe teach 1 or 2 things to some of the younger guys on the team, you know, push them in training camp that you probably don't need to pay housing and things like that for. Adding Elfrid Payton onto this is cool. It'd be fun to see him play in preseason for this team too, if it ends up going that far. So I'm happy that they're doing this as just kind of a body in training camp that maybe puts some more eyes on the team, pushes these guys a little bit more too. So that's probably what's going on here. I don't think he really has much of a chance of making the roster. You know, they're going to look at Jose Alvarado kind of being that backup point guard, CJ that backup point guard. You just drafted Antonio Reeves and traded up for him. While Reeves might play in the G League a bunch, I just don't see a role for Elfrid Payton, even if it would be an incredible kind of comeback story with this team. The local guy, like, he grew up rooting for this franchise. That's something that I think is really cool too. His AAU team still plays out here, so he's still involved. Love the idea. But unfortunately, I don't see Elfrid Payton making the roster at all. But I've been wrong about some things like this before. The other news is the Pelicans are signing Isaiah Brockington to a training camp deal as well, per Andrew Lopez. You know, he was with the team's G League affiliate last year. He got in 1 game for the Pelicans, scoring 4 points. You know, that was cool. But overall, I don't think this is a guy who's going to end up making the roster either. They really have a soft spot for him, and I kind of like what they do here. You know, he came in a couple of years ago for a workout and injured his knee. The Pelicans then signed him to a 2-way deal. which was a really nice thing, waived him about a week or so later. They signed him in training camp last year. They ended up waiving him before, but ended up signing a 10-day contract during this past year with New Orleans. Someone they clearly were very, very high on. I think they feel kind of bad about what happened with the injury to his knee while he was in here for a workout. It's really unfortunate how that goes sometimes. And they're just trying to kind of make it right to him, I think, in a sense. This was someone who maybe would be on the tail end of an NBA roster had that injury not occurred. They really liked what, he could have shown them in all of his play here, coming out of Iowa State as that kind of bigger point guard, 6'4", so he's got decent size. They like the defensive intensity that he's had. He'd shown signs maybe of being an okay three-point shooter coming into the league too, but ultimately just hasn't really worked out for him. Again, when you look at the Pelicans roster, there just isn't a spot for some of these guys right now. And he's going to ultimately just be waived. Like, that's how this is going to go most likely. Maybe Matt Ryan could be on the outs, but I think they might try and keep him. He's on an unguaranteed deal, and at least you trust the three-point shooting for him. And as we just said in the first segment, more three-point shooting around Zion Williamson, please. We'll talk more about that later in the week, too, when we look at Trey Murphy. I want to look at his minutes, and should he just be linked to Zion Williamson? Simple as that. I think the answer, truthfully, might be yes to that sort of question. So these are the two additions so far. We'll probably get one or two more for training camp when it comes to it. You'll probably see some of the guys that were on the Summer League team too get invites to training camp. These are probably the two biggest names. Elfrid Payton being a pretty decent name when it comes to that sort of thing. But neither of these guys are going to end up making the roster. There just really isn't a spot for them. And when you think about all the ball handling they have on the team, look, Zion does it. Brandon Ingram does it. CJ, Jose, Murray. 5 guys that are going to be handling the ball a lot. It doesn't really leave a spot for a point guard like Elfrid Payton. Doesn't really leave room for someone like Isaiah Brockington coming in either. So that's the latest news there. On the coaching staff, there are going to be a couple of changes. Don't forget that Fred Vinson left to go to Detroit with Trajan Langdon taking over that GM role there, pulling away one of the better shot doctors, shooting coaches in the league in Fred Vinson. That leaves an opening on the coaching staff here, and it sounds like, per Lindsay Go on Twitter here, it's at LG on TV at an event. I think it was the Hall of Fame in Kentucky, where Jody Meeks was being inducted into the Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame for the school. Said he's getting into coaching with the New Orleans Pelicans. So he's kind of already, by the way, been a coach with the New Orleans Pelicans. Just in the G League, he's been coaching for the G League affiliate here, the Birmingham Squadron. But it sounds like he's going to be coming back and coaching on the Pelicans coaching staff. So that's really exciting for the team. He's going to be an assistant here. I don't know if he's going to be the exact same kind of like shot doctor or what exactly his role will be with this team in terms of kind of like responsibilities and those sorts of things. But Jody Meeks, for being a role player in the NBA, carved out a pretty nice career overall. This was someone who was drafted in the second round and played a number of seasons, and that's a pretty good career for him. Somewhat recently retiring back into the 18-19 year was the last year that he ended up playing in the NBA. But this is a guy with 4 seasons shooting above 40% from three. His career three-point average is 37.3. It's a pretty good number. Kind of in that era where the three ball started to rise, and his job coming off the bench was to come in and take threes and make threes. And he did that with, a pretty good ability at the NBA level. I'm a big believer in adding former NBA players on your coaching staff. I think that is a really important thing. And when you look at a lot of guys that have had success around the league as more recent NBA hires, they have playing experience in some capacity. I think that experience is important because it allows those guys to relate to players. You could bring in a brilliant offensive mind, but if he didn't play in the NBA, yes, they might listen to him, they might respect him, it could go really well. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but if you have someone that can kind of be like, yeah, I've been where you are, and connect with the players on that level is a really good thing. You've seen a lot of guys, Willie Green included, and Willie Green could be a little bit on the hot seat going in, so I'm not saying it's perfect here, But that is a way that they can connect with these players, and that goes a really long way in getting their buy-in, which in my opinion is the biggest job of some of these coaching staffs that they need to work on. Willie Green has done it. The staff has done that. If Jody Meeks is a three-point specialist, can help this team when it comes to shooting, all for it, because the team wants to take more threes. We'll see if they end up doing that. They need to keep that three-point percentage high. They were 7th last year. If Jody Meeks can help add to that, I love it. I have a love-hate relationship, as a small aside that doesn't truly matter here, to Jody Meeks. He knocked me out of my fantasy basketball playoffs one year, where he went in and had like a 40-point game as like our final game of the regular season. It was when he was with the Lakers, I think, or maybe when he was with the Pistons, or maybe it was against the Pistons. He knocked me out of the playoffs. I think he was on my opponent Tyler's team. I see you, Tyler. Jody Meeks scored 43 points. I lost that game, and then I was not in the playoffs. So Jody Meeks can make it up to me personally by helping this team shoot threes and improving in that way. So those are the latest updates for the Pelicans here. I want to talk about next a big update around the NBA, and that is Adrian Wojnarowski retiring from ESPN, the biggest newsbreaker there is out there. I'm going to miss this. I think that is one of the most fun and underrated aspects of being an NBA fan was Woj bombs, Shams bombs, all of those things. I'll explain what I mean by that. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by eBay Motors. Whatever you're looking for with your car, whether you're looking for speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. A supercharger to make it go fast, exhaust to make it sound loud and awesome, and I love it, right? Maybe you just need LED headlights to see at night, or a roof rack to take when you're going camping and put your gear on. eBay Motors has everything for you. I work on all of my cars, and this is the only place that I order parts from. I've tried other places, but sometimes you get a part that doesn't fit your car, and now you're stuck and you paid for it. They don't let you return it. With eBay Motors, you don't need to worry about that. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. I've not been able to close a hood on a car because I ordered a part because I tried to be smart about it, cheap about it. No, just get what fits your car and they're going to let you know. And you're going to be able to find whatever it is you're looking for, from an old car to a newer car, because with over 122 million parts for your vehicle, you're going to find what you're looking for every time. And then the prices, they're good, y'all. I'd be broke otherwise. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. So with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home a big win here. So keep your vehicle alive over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And for your second listen today, Locked On Saints with host Ross Jackson. He's going to be making sense of everything black and gold that you want to know, especially after that loss to the Eagles. Bad Derek Carr back. That interception at the end was not great. He's going to make sense of everything. Go make Locked On Saints your second listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's start to wrap up the show here. Some of the biggest news around the NBA has nothing to do with the players right now, and that's Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN, Woj, and the famous Woj bombs retiring and leaving the news-breaking game. And I'm not going to get into the stuff of like, was his reporting bad? Was like the information brokering? And there was, a lot behind it, good, bad for the league, anything like that. Like, I don't truthfully care enough to like pontificate on here about like media presence and whether it's helping the league or harming the league. There's a lot of other people that do that sort of thing, both good and bad coverage of that. I'm going to miss Woj because one of the reasons I love doing this, and one of the reasons that I've gotten into doing this, and one of the things that kind of keeps me motivated every year is I feel like I'm part of a community. When it comes to Pelicans fans, I feel like I'm part of the community with y'all, with the Pels 12, or just whoever you are. Look, I'm a fan of the team. I don't come in with just like the true unbiased coverage necessarily. I've got to shoot you straight and call it like it is, certainly, but I'm rooting for them to win. When you're often an NBA beat writer, you don't care. The job's the job. You're going to get paid whether they win or lose, no matter what. So you hear a lot of beat writers just not truly care and just kind of treat it as a job and indifference. That's not me. You can hear a lot of times the passion, the anger, the happiness, depending on certain losses. While you have the angry cast when they have a real bad loss, we need to come in and vent and yell. And I enjoy being part of the community with that sort of thing. I've made a lot of friendships through all of this, and I really value all of that. I love kind of being part of the group, and I think a lot of y'all feel the same way. You know, one of it goes beyond just being a Pelicans fan, right? You can be a fan of the NBA at large. And if you're kind of participating on social media, Twitter, X, whatever you call it in particular, right? That's kind of the epicenter for all of this. When it's late night and you're watching a game, you know, it's Luka versus Jokic, let's say, and Luka's having a 60-point triple-double and doing ridiculous things. And everyone's tweeting out and you're following along with it. It feels like you're just in a room with people losing their collective minds in a very, very fun way. When everyone's making the jokes when someone does stupid things or there's a ref error and we're all screaming about the refs, you're part of the group. You belong, right? Like a member of the tribe kind of idea. And I love that feeling. Honestly, the way things went, I just love that kind of moment where everyone just collectively freaks out and loses their mind over something exciting or funny or dumb, whatever it might be. Woj was a big part of that. Woj was a huge, huge part of that, where all of a sudden you're just chilling. It's an easy night. And then you get the alert on your phone that Woj has tweeted something out and it's some big breaking news that you had no idea was coming. And then everyone heads to Twitter and collectively loses their minds in a really, really fun way. I love that. We're going to miss some of that this year. I think that was collectively good for the league. Just everyone being excited when the news broke. Those moments where there's a trade where you're like, wait, what? That just happened? And everyone is freaking out is so much fun. Is so much fun to me. Woj was a big part of that. To me, he made following the NBA more fun. Covering the NBA more fun by those moments when everyone just kind of got together to talk about the same thing from all over the world. Shams has it too. I don't really care about the rivalry between the two of them or anything like that. I'm just going to miss Woj breaking all of like those big news stories and, you know, everyone losing their minds. We're going to miss that next year. And there's just no getting around that we are going to lose that. And it makes me kind of sad. We'll still have those moments. And you would imagine guys like Shams are going to keep breaking the news. Mark Stein, who's been very clued into what's going on with the Pelicans, is still there. That's going to be doing it as well, as are others. So you'll still see a lot of that happening. Brian Windhorst with ESPN is actually pretty reliable and good when it comes to that sort of thing too. But Gonna miss it. That's why kind of following along on Twitter, you know, if you don't do that, it can be a lot of fun. Social media also can suck at times too. So there's certainly that. A couple of years ago, I wrote a cover story for Gambit in New Orleans, which was really cool. And it was centered around Twitter and the NBA and making predictions that way and like finding future tweets and things and trying to kind of predict what was going to happen. It was a lot of fun. It was really cool and shows you how important that is to the coverage of the league too. And we're going to be missing part of that this year. So good for Woj for getting out here on kind of on top. That job sounds awful. I have no desire for a job like that ever, but kind of going out on his own terms, going to his alma mater, that's pretty cool. So going to miss Woj this coming season. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. I appreciate y'all so much for listening. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter tomorrow. Let's look at Carlo Makovich a little bit, the centers as well. Instead of Daniel Tice, if one of those guys develops, if Yves Missi develops, Makovich develops, if Trey Jemison develops, what's that mean for the team? And I think it's bigger than you might realize. We'll break that all down in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll see y'all then.